just how much this annoys the community. So while hardcore and bedrock would be a welcome addition, if your world can end just like that, we've got a problem. Number 13. As we've talked in the past, Minecraft sprites don't always line up with the game's world, and a long-standing example of that lies with our classic helmets. See, in the iron, gold, and diamond variants, there's no sign of a nose piece in the sprite, but when you put it on, those pixels just appear. And to be clear, I don't think anyone is against the idea of having a nose piece on the helmets, but maybe take a page out of the Netherite's book and update the sprites. And hey, since Spectral Arrows got fixed, maybe there is some hope. Number 14. Once you see something, it's gonna be tough to unsee. So I apologize in advance, but you should know that command block textures happen to be off-center. And funnily enough, that isn't only limited to one side, but rather all of these textures on the command block are skewed to one side instead of the other. Now the reason is likely that command blocks are a 16 by 16 texture, and the pattern here would require something like a 32 by 32 to pull off. But really, since the command block texture already changed in 1.14, why not do one more shift to make it right? Number 15. Chainmail armor is somewhat of a white whale to the Minecraft world. After all, as long as it's been around, there's been no way to craft it without some kind of cheat. And after Mojang removed the recipe using fire, we've been out of luck to use this armor in our worlds. That is, until 1.16 came around, and then we finally got chains added into the game. But at that point, when it seemed like we had a chance, it turned out that chains could only be used for decoration, nothing else. Which is safe to say, a bit disappointing. Number 16. When it comes to graphic design, it's always nice to have things line up, which is why this experience bar poses a bit of a problem. You see, in Bedrock Edition, the right side of the bar matches up with the hotbar's side, but the left doesn't. And sure, the game still plays the same whether it's off or not, but programs like Photoshop make lining things up so easy, so there's little reason not to do so. And now that I know it's there, it's gonna be tough to unsee. Number 17. Item frames are an incredibly versatile block for decorations. And with the recent addition of glowing and invisible variants, there's even more of a reason to use item frames inside of your creative builds. But that only makes this problem all that more noticeable, since when in creative, if you punch an item to get it out of a frame, much like you would in survival, it doesn't drop the item, but just deletes it instead. And that can be quite annoying and definitely unintuitive. So save us the hassle and just drop the item as is. Number 18. By themselves, villagers are an irritating mob, but when you try to move them, that frustration cranks up to 11. Since they can't be led around like pigs or cows, we need something like a boat to take them long distances. But using a boat in a village has its own problems. Namely, if you row the boat on top of a path block, you're out of luck. Since you can't row the boat upwards, that one pixel is all it takes to lock your boat to that path. And now you gotta break it and start all the way over. Number 19. Plains biomes make for great locations for building. Just there you get lush grass, flat surfaces, and an overall nice atmosphere for your base. But there is one problem point you're sure to notice. Say you're placing the blocks as a foundation for your new house, laying them out in a row, only to have your flow interrupted by a measly flower. Since tulips, unlike the neighboring grass, have their own persistent hitbox, meaning we can't just place our blocks as we please. Which means most of the time we see these, they're just gonna be a roadblock to your building flow. Number 20. Obsidian mining is a pain in its own right. But as anyone knows, if you're mining this by lava, there's even more opportunities for irritation. Say you take the time to mine out one of these cubes, only for some then newly exposed lava to flow and then burn that item right before you could grab it. It's a rude awakening, that's for sure. And while there are ways to mitigate the risk by using a water bucket, that doesn't bring back the one I lost to the fiery abyss. And all that wasted time is surely gonna sting as you mine the next one. Number 21. Some things sound cooler in theory than they are in execution. And I hate to say it, but I think Frostwalker's in that bunch. Don't get me wrong, when it works and you're sprinting in time with the ice, it's great. But all it takes is one jump or a bit of hesitation, and then that whole rhythm is doomed. Sure enough, once you're in the water, there's no way to reactivate the enchantment without finding another shoreline. And if you ask me, that grievance keeps this enchantment from being the real stable it could be. Number 22. Accidentally crafting something is a bad time that we've all been through. Because when you mistakenly craft another chest plate for your friend, that's a lot of value that you just washed down the drain. Now sure, you could smelt it in your furnace for a return, but folks, that's a ripoff in its own way. A full durability iron or gold chest plate, which costs 72 nuggets to craft, reduces down to only one in a furnace. And I'm familiar with a margin of error, but that just seems ridiculous. And it's definitely not worth the attempt. Number 23. The ability to glaze terracotta opens up a bunch of new patterns to use in your builds. And while some of those are fun, others can be a headache. For an example, if we look at the light gray glazed terracotta block like this, it seems fine. But when you align it like so, the middle design doesn't line up across the blocks, which shuts down some really interesting floor patterns before they could even get off the ground. And maybe there is someday we'll see these centerpieces line up with one another. But until then, I'd rather just use a different block. Number 24. If you're looking for annoying blocks in Minecraft, then the cauldron is an obvious candidate. After all, it's frustrating for something that holds water to lose many of its properties with said water. And that juxtaposition only gets more apparent when you put it next to waterlogged blocks. Here, we could use the one pixel of water on top of a waterlogged chest to not only save us from falls, but also allow for the Riptide enchantment. But with the cauldron, no chance. It's only
This holiday season, you can get them the usual, or you can get them Zazzle. With Zazzle, you can create personalized gifts